On December 1st, a new-look regional council will be sworn in for the next four-year term. There's no doubt that news stories about the current regional council influenced Niagara's voters at the polls October 22nd. Today, The Source sits down with St. Catharines Standard reporter Grant LaFleche to talk about the issues, the results, and the future facing our new regional councillors.
What it showed us is that people were paying attention to our coverage. It showed us, and I think it showed voters and it showed citizens why it's important to have a robust, functioning daily news agency in your community. A lot of the stuff that we reported, nobody else in the region not only were reporting it, but couldn't report it, didn't have the staff, didn't have the resources to do it. So, and the feedback we've been getting since the election has been your coverage helped guide the way in which we were voting, which really hasn't happened to this degree before. It's all kind of unusual for us. But certainly, yeah, I mean, people were paying attention, and I think a lot of the sweep of incumbents that we saw was driven very heavily in the stuff that we were able to bring to light over the last couple of years. You look at the region, which is where a lot of our focus at the Standard has been, and all kinds of incumbents from, Grimsby all the way down to Fort Erie are gone, including key players like Tony Quirk, Sandy Nunziata. Here in St. Catharines, Al Kazan became only the second sitting regional chair to not gain re-election. And he didn't just not get a seat, he finished in the basement.
He was 19th out of 23.
Yeah.
Again, starting with the regional numbers, going over some of the names that may have been sort of lost in the lurch who didn't get re-elected.
Yep.
Henry D'Angelo.
Yes. Yep.
Ted Luciani. Kelly Edgar, who had stepped up
Yep.
at some regional council meetings and really impressed people
Yep.
when he was running those meetings. Seventh place, I believe, in the St. Catharines voting.
Yep.
Pat Dart was sort of marginal as far as his links to what was called the cabal.
Yep.
George Marshall, someone with a lot of experience. Why do you think they were caught up in this landslide?
I think there were two things happening simultaneously. Specifically to St. Catharines, you look at that field of 22 candidates, 23 if you include Mr. Allen. There were very few kind of marginal or fringe candidates. You had incumbents like Brian Haidt, Tim Rigby, Kelly Edgar, Al Kazan. Whether you like their politics or not, they were established politicians with the power of incumbency we spoke about before. You had newcomers like, well, in the case of Laura Yip, kind of a quasi-newcomer, Mohammed Al-Jumli, Haley Bateman. I mean, you really had well-known community activists. That's a very deep field. The other element was, from Pelham all the way to Fort Erie, there was a general feeling that we needed change, particularly at the regional level. We needed change. There were candidates, established candidates, like Mr. Edgar, like Mr. Haidt, who were very concerned that even though they had stood up to the cabal on council, that they may get caught up in this tide for change. And I think that's what happened.
Was there a time during this saga over the 4 years where you looked at things as they were being discovered, as they were coming in? Did you scratch your head and just say, this can't be possible, that I'm getting more?
Yeah, oh yeah. Our first story on what ended up being called All the Chairs Men on the CIO story ran in April of this year. My investigation actually began in November 2017, and it took that long to build a network of sources, to get documents, to confirm them. So when that first story ran, we thought, okay, this is it. I mean, we've poured all this energy and effort into it. Our reporting is solid. There will have to be consequences to the people involved because it's so extreme. And naively, we thought that was the end. And within weeks, we realized that wasn't even close to the end. And so the region, as you might recall, hired an external lawyer to do their own, kind of half-done, paid and bought for investigation into the CIO hiring. And then when his report came back and said, oh, there's nothing to see here, folks, everything's fine, council votes to keep the matter closed. What they didn't know is I had been tracking that lawyer's investigation, knew he hadn't found anything, and I was already waist deep in more stuff. So by the time we reached July, we knew the well was much deeper than we had originally anticipated. And here we are in October, toward the end of October, and we're still not done.
More to come with St. Catharines Standard reporter Grant LaFleche. Look for part 2 of our chat on The Source as we talk about what's facing this new regional council over the next 4 years. Reporting in St. Catharines, Mike Balsom for The Source.